This crazy looking thing is the MSI Aegis Ti3. It is a relatively high-end gaming desktop with a rather interesting form factor and style. We're going to take a look at it in the video, so do stick around. Now, this system can come in a variety of form factors with a variety of options available, although they aren't necessarily customizable by you. You just have to pick the one that you want from a set list and get that one, as opposed to the more custom PC builders, people like Overclockers UK for example, where you can go to their site and actually customize each of the components in the system yourself. This is a full pre-built, this is an off-the-shelf machine as you get it, and I guess that works for some people. Now, as I mentioned, this is a pretty interesting form factor, so let's take a look at it. On the front you have a rather aggressive angular design, obviously your I/O up the top with a couple of USB 3 ports and a Type-C port, as well as a VR pass-through or an HDMI pass-through, which comes from the rear, and I'll show you that in a second, but it's basically if you want to connect to your VR headset, you can do it there as opposed to at the back of the PC where you get a little bit more room. You also get the overclock button on the front, which, as you'd expect, lights up when you press it. It gives a light overclock to the system, assuming you have the MSI software installed, which obviously comes installed by default. The software itself is relatively simple. It allows you to do a couple of little bits and pieces of controlling the machine, and a little bit of overclocking if you fancy, and a little bit of sort of monitoring core temps and stuff like that. So kind of a semi-useful add-on. Between the I/O and the overclock button, you do also get a DVD or a disk drive. This is a slimline one. It actually came unplugged when I got the system. I had to re-plug the SATA and power connector in to you know, make it work. But I would also mention that it is incredibly flimsy and feels incredibly cheap. Not that anyone's going to use it. And when you have the system on, the front lights up red in a very aggressive styling option, which does look quite cool, but obviously kind of depends what your taste is. On both sides of the system you have these headphone hangers that kind of fold out. These are quite cool if you know, have headphones that you want to hang on the side of your system and you don't already have a place to put them. So I guess that's kind of cool. They just kind of look like antennas, although they most certainly aren't, but you know, kind of look cool. And if you're looking at it from the front, the left-hand side of the system is actually where your graphics card mounts. You can see it through a window. It's actually a window and a grate, so kind of difficult, obscure to see, but the graphics card that's hiding in here is a 1080 Ti. You can actually get this in 1080 Ti SLI variants, although this model specifically isn't one. And while we're talking about specs, the CPU in here is an 8700K with a 120mm liquid cooler, which you can actually see if you open it up, which apparently does void the warranty or something. At least there's tamper-proof stickers on the back, which is a bit of a pain. Also, you can see the internal 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It's actually SODIMM memory as opposed to full-size memory, and there's actually 2 extra slots for SODIMM memory on the back if you want to upgrade even further. Also on the back is 2 M.2 SSDs. These are your boot drive. You can also find your hard drive in the sort of base section. You do remove 2 screws at the back and just slide it off, and you can install a hard drive. Technically, you can actually install a second hard drive in here, although I didn't see a second hard drive sled, so you would just have to sort of balance it in, although it does look like they've provided cables here, so I'm kind of confused by that, but it's an option if you want to. Just above those M.2 SSDs I mentioned is actually slots for 3 SSD or 3 2.5-inch drive mounts. There's actually a connector already available there if you want to add a 2.5-inch drive, although again I don't see any drive sleds available to actually mount it. And there's obviously positions for 3 of those, although only 1 cable available, but it does look like there are more SATA ports available on the motherboard inside, so if you did want to load this thing up, it looks like you could. And while we're on the topic of storage, instead of a second 1080 Ti, this system has an M.2 riser card. It's actually shaped like a low-profile graphics card, has a blower kind of cooler fan on it, which is kind of cool, and has 2 M.2 SSDs. This is their game drive. These are in, I believe, RAID 0 for ultra-fast performance, and is pretty impressive to be able to have that much speed and that much capacity. Either way, it's still really nice to see multiple M.2 drives, especially purely as a game drive. Take a look at the back of the system. You'll see that the power supply is actually very far inset to the back. It's actually more central than anything. It can be a little bit difficult to get into, but obviously it is possible, so not too much to worry about. On the actual top side of the back, you have obviously the graphics cards at the top, depending on if you have the SLI system or not. You have the VR Link port in the middle, where they include a short HDMI cable in the box if you want to connect one of the outputs of your graphics card to this to pass that through to the front port. And also you have your motherboard I/O, which includes your standard USB 2, USB 3, Gigabit Ethernet and audio connections. I know that I've already showed most of the inside of the system here, but I just want to cover the design of this chassis. It is a completely proprietary motherboard, so there is no way to upgrade this in the future besides just buying a new version of this. It seems like the motherboard, there's kind of two sections. There's the motherboard section at the bottom, which includes your cooler or your RAM and SSDs and stuff like that, and you have the top section, which has its own airflow path and it's almost entirely blocked off from the motherboard section for your graphics cards, which again uses a custom proprietary extender board that allows you to then connect to the motherboard underneath. So with that all out of the way, let's take a look at the performance results from this rather impressive system. Starting off with 3D Mark Firestrike, you can see that this is 22,418 points at 1080p, which is really pretty impressive. 1440p is over 13,000 points, and 4K is over 7,000 points. In Dirt Rally and Ultra settings, you're looking at 150 FPS at 1080p, 126 at 1440p, and 82 4K, which again is really pretty impressive. And in GTA 5 on very high settings, you're looking at 171, 150, and 108 respectively for 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. In Unity Heaven, you're looking at 228 FPS at 1080p, 143 at 1440p, and 59 at 4K, which is actually a really impressive score considering how unoptimized Unity Heaven is for 4K, so really very impressive. Now, as you'd expect with an 8700K and a 1080 Ti, these are really impressive performance results. I'm happy to say that upgrading the graphics card in these systems are relatively easy to do, so that's definitely nice to see. And of course, in terms of upgrading the CPU, that's pretty unlikely. I don't really expect MSI to be updating the BIOS on these systems that much, and even if they do, I don't know that Intel is going to support the Z370 chipset in the future anyway, so upgrading the CPU is probably unlikely here, but obviously upgrading the GPU, which is kind of the main factor in gaming performance at the moment anyway, seems to be relatively easy, which is definitely nice. Now, of course, with all of these sorts of pre-built, especially with custom components like a custom chassis and a custom motherboard, you're likely looking at a pretty high price premium. Now, this may depend where you are in the world and when you watch this, but for the most part, these systems are a good couple £100 more expensive than if you were building the system with these sorts of parts yourself. Now, of course, you won't necessarily get the same form factor or anything like that. Obviously, this is quite a custom chassis, but in terms of its sheer size, you can definitely find something for less than this with the same sort of spec. But as you kind of expect with these sort of things, if you're happy to build your own PC, definitely go do that. This is for the sort of person who has some money to spend, wants an awesome, aggressively styled gaming PC, but doesn't know how to build a PC, or just doesn't care enough to build a PC and just wants a ready-made box that they can, you know, look at and smile knowing that they have the best of the best and they've paid for it. So do I recommend this system? Well, in terms of its performance, definitely it's an awesome system. In terms of its overall spec and design, it seems pretty decent. There's a lot of upgradability-ish options here, and overall it's not too quiet, but it's not the loudest thing in the world. I think that's mostly down to the high-end sort of spec of the system and the fact that there are probably 7 fans in here if you include the graphics card fans, so a little bit on the loud side, but nothing too bad. And otherwise, I said, in terms of its value proposition, I don't think so. Now, of course, that is my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Is this a sort of system you'd be picking up? Are you interested in buying one? Or is this something that you kind of look at and go, "Huh, that's cool, I'll go build my own," thanks? Let me know in the comments down below. But with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at the scoring. For me, this is going to be a 3.5 for value for money with a 5 for performance. It's going to be a 4.5 for functionality and a 4 for styling, with a 4.5 for TechteamGB score and a gold award. It's a pretty high-priced system, but again, as I said, this isn't really looking at the specific value for money proposition. It's more about the sort of person who wants to pick up a PC in Best Buy or PC World and just have an awesome gaming experience. So with that in mind, I think that's why I'm going for that. If you have any thoughts on that, feel free to let me know in the comments down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And if you have any questions about the system, leave those down there too. I'll do my best to find this spec for the link in the description down below, but if you want to take a look at pricing when and where you watch this, use that link that will take you to your local Amazon store where you you can find all of that out. If you want to support the channel and keep me making these videos on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and now Saturday basis, feel free to take a look at the Patreon link in the description down below, or you can use the Amazon and Overclock UK affiliate links to support me down there too. There's also some extra things like merch which I actually aren't wearing today, or you can also take a look at that subscribe button if you're new to the channel too. Otherwise, as I said, if you've got any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the system as well. There are some videos over here for you to take a look at, and otherwise that is pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.